Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 8th Annual Police Chaplains Conference. Before we get started, I'd like to run through a few housekeeping items so you all know how to participate in today's event. First, all lines are on mute. If time permits, we will host a Q&A at the end of each panel discussion. You will have the opportunity to send in your questions to today's presenters during this time. To do so, please type your thoughts into the questions pane on the control panel. Similar questions will be combined, and inappropriate or offensive comments will not be announced. Due to time constraints, please keep all questions on topic. If you experience any technical difficulties during today's program, please explain your problem through the chat feature, and we will do our best to assist you. Lastly, we are recording this, and the video will be available on our YouTube page within 24 hours. Please subscribe to New Jersey OAG on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Flickr for the latest updates on news, resources, and information from our office. Now, I'd like to introduce and welcome our event organizer, Bryn Whittle, the Director of Community Engagement for the Office of the Attorney General.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. And thank you so much for joining us this morning for our 8th annual Police Chaplains Conference. We are so glad that we are able to bring this to you virtually, and we thank you for joining us. I like to start off the mornings by saying that this is the day that the Lord has made, and I shall rejoice and be glad in it. It always frames my day. It makes me reflect on what's good and what's kind in this world. And also today, especially, it helps me to think of all of you, all of the chaplains, faith leaders, community leaders, law enforcement leaders that we have joining us today for this conference. You are amazing and you are great. So we just thank you today for joining us to hear about a resiliency update, chaplain wellness, and our use of force reform. So with that being said, I want to turn today's conference over to our amazing moderator. Many of you know him. He has trained so many of you. He has been out to your facilities and helped you to get your program started. He is a dynamo in this area, and he has the passion and the perseverance to make sure that chaplaincy thrives in New Jersey. And so we are so happy to have him as today's moderator. And that is none other than Chaplain Gary Holden. Thank you, Chaplain Holden, for all that you do. The program is yours.
I don't know about the dynamo part, but the rest of it we'll try to figure out. But we're excited about our chaplains conference again. We wish we were all together in person, but hopefully next year. But thank you, Bryn, for all the work that you have done, and the AG's office for taking care of all this so we can have this conference, and Dave Lenardis, who's been part of this team and putting all this together. And I thank Tara Camp as well for taking care of all the tech for this. So we're going to do our best to work through all the technical aspects of it, but we will have question and answer time. So we just want you to know that. So we're going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I got my flag here, so maybe you can all say it at home or wherever you are, as well as I lead you in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I was thinking about singing the national anthem, but I knew that you all wouldn't appreciate that too much. But we're going to pray, and that's something certainly that I can do and we can all do together. So let's bow in prayer as we begin our conference together. Lord, I thank you that we could be together in this way for so many that have tuned in from all around. And I thank you for that we can learn from one another. I thank you, Lord, that this is the 8th year that we've been doing our chaplains conference. And even though we're doing it in a different way, we still have this opportunity to do it. So we rejoice that this door is open for us. And Lord, we want to learn much today. So give us wisdom and understanding for each presenter. Help them as they present their presentation and the things that they want to share. Give them the words to say. And we'll just commit this time together to you. In your most wonderful holy name, I pray. Amen. So you can all say amen if you would like. I can't hear you, but that'd be fine as well. So we're going to start today with three presentations. First of all, from our Attorney General Graywell, and then from Esther Suarez, who is the Hudson County prosecutor and also president of the Prosecutors Association of New Jersey. And then Chief Zembrowski, who is the chief of the Sayreville Police Department and the first vice president of the New Jersey office of the Chiefs of Police organization. And also, they have the chaplain program in the Sayreville Police Department, and we were able to do a chaplain training there a number of years ago. So we'll hear from these three individuals as they open our conference today.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the 8th Annual Police Chaplains Conference. Again, we find ourselves meeting virtually instead of gathering together at the War Memorial. This is a testament to the work that you do as public servants, because no matter how difficult times are, you find ways to help others, to inspire hope, and importantly, to bridge divides. During these challenging times, you've supported our law enforcement officers through unimaginable crises, from the sickness or loss of fellow officers and loved ones, to helping our understanding of this racial reckoning that our country is facing right now. Likewise, you're serving your communities, helping them deal with the hurt, the pain, and the loss of beloved family and friends. You've also marched alongside protesters last summer to help us maintain peace. You all have been the glue holding it together. You've become an instrumental partner to our Officer Resiliency Program. But when do you rest? When do you take time to refresh and to renew? I hope that you'll be able to use some tips learned today about chaplain wellness. In addition to officer resiliency, there is help for chaplains as well. I trust you'll avail yourselves to those resources. Let's get stronger together. Because the truth of the matter is, we need you to help us as we make policing more accountable, more professional, and more transparent. Last year, I launched the first ever Attorney General's Excellence in Policing Awards. These awards were my way of acknowledging many of the innovative and impactful programs and law enforcement officers across our state. Again, much of this work is made possible by your dedication. So we included a category to celebrate a chaplain who went above and beyond their normal duties. You'll see that video today. You'll also hear about our progress on policing reform, specifically our updated use of force policy. Many of you have participated in our 21-21 events along with members of the public and provided us with feedback. I'm proud of the policies and reforms we've built together. But while I recognize policing reforms are a good start to effectuate change, I know that much more is needed. Much more is needed to heal years of mistrust between police and community. You see, we need individuals of faith, like so many of you. Why? Because you have hope, because you want to help, because you are called to serve. With your assistance, we can do more to foster connections. We want to undertake the demanding work of community engagement. We want to have these difficult conversations, and we want to enact bold changes in our communities, because we know that's how we'll make a difference. Last year, I shared this thought from Nelson Mandela, and I think it's appropriate today. He said, "What counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we lead." Members of the clergy play an invaluable role. You are the voices of your communities. It's my hope that the information and tools you gain from today's conference will help you make a difference in the lives of others within the communities that you serve. So thank you all for the work that you do, and please stay safe.
Good morning. I'm Hudson County Prosecutor Esther Suarez and President of the County Prosecutors Association of New Jersey. I'm pleased and honored to welcome all of you to the 8th Annual Police Chaplains Conference, which is being hosted by the Office of the New Jersey Attorney General in partnership with the New Jersey Association of Chiefs of Police, the County Prosecutors Association of New Jersey, and the Police Chaplains Program. First and foremost, I want to thank each of you for your dedicated service to the state of New Jersey and to the residents of your communities. As our police chaplains and faith partners, you are a vital part of our criminal justice system and the communities you serve. Your call to respond to the most difficult incidents when individuals are faced with the greatest crises of their lives and provide them with compassion and support. This past year, as we faced a global pandemic together, you shouldered heavy and profound loss and demonstrated the greatest resiliency. While certainly the pandemic has taken a toll on all New Jerseyans, we know the particular impact it's had on first responders, including our police chaplains. You've also been at the forefront of this call for social justice and police reform, often serving as the voices for the most marginalized communities. Your partnership in this area has been invaluable, and we look forward to continuing that progress together. Today's conference will cover many of these topics and important issues, such as officer resiliency, police chaplain wellness, and police reform. It's my hope that not only will you gain valuable information today, but that it will be a collaborative process for all of us. Thank you, and God bless.
I'm Chief John Zabrowski, President-elect of the New Jersey State Association of Chiefs of Police. On behalf of the over 500 members, as well as our retirees, it is my pleasure to be able to commend all the members of our chaplaincy service for your efforts throughout the year. We recognize how hard the job is, and you do it so well in an understated fashion. Whether it's assisting with building bridges and breaking down barriers through communities, to providing resources and spiritual guidance through crisis, or simply helping an officer who's in need through our resiliency program. Without you, I don't know where we would be. You're certainly indispensable. I know from my perspective, we've had a great deal of issues in which our chaplaincy program, along with our faith-based community leaders, have worked so hard to build those bonds. After Superstorm Sandy, the floods wiped out a whole community within my town. Families had to rebuild, and it was a very difficult time. But through the help of our chaplaincy service and our faith-based leaders, we were able to rebuild, rehabilitate, and we're stronger than ever. Also, this year has been very difficult, as we all know, whether it was the pandemic or the many issues that have taken place throughout our nation. They've indescribably affected our police officers, some of which have questioned whether they want to continue to be a police officer. We've sought your spiritual guidance and your assistance, and through our resiliency program, you have been indispensable in helping those officers in need. My hat is off to you. I look forward in the next year to work well together, to continue this partnership, and to be able to continue to build those bonds that we have through our community, those bridges that we need to gain trust, and any programs that may be able to come out to be building a better future for all of us. I hope you enjoy your conference, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you very much.
So we're very thankful for our program partners, and it's wonderful to be able to work together as a team to help our law enforcement officers and our communities as well. So my thanks to our partners, our program partners in law enforcement, as we work together as chaplains with them. I would like to introduce right now Rob Sepiel and also Dave Lenardis, who will come on after Rob. And Rob's going to share about the New Jersey Resiliency Program that most of you should know about by this time. And even though we were set back some because of COVID, the trainings continue, and the need and the purpose of the resiliency program. So I'm going to turn it over to Rob Sepiel at this time.
Thank you, Gary, and it's a pleasure to be here again with all of you, albeit virtually, and hopefully next year we all can actually see each other and enjoy each other's company. On behalf of Dee and Mike Pellegrino and the team here at Resilient Minds on the front lines, I'm Rob Sepiel. I'm the CEO of Resilient Minds. I want to talk a little bit about where we've been with the resiliency program, where we're going under the leadership of Dave Leonardis, who will be the acting Chief Resiliency Officer in New Jersey for a little while, and a big thank you. And I want to start with the thank you. Mr. Rogers talks about whenever there's a crisis or whenever anything happens, you look for the helpers. And your group and the police chaplains and the Chaplains Association and Gary and every chaplain that I have worked with this group have always been the helpers, whether it's with the resiliency program and giving of your time, whether it's with food drives that we have done over the past year with the Division of Criminal Justice. Gary Holden is usually my first call, and usually no matter what the ask is, the answer is always yes. And every chaplain that I have met, the answer is always yes. And so without your yeses, we would never be able to do and accomplish all the things that we've done on the resiliency front, on the outreach front, on the food drive front, on everything that we have done. So from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for always being yes, for always saying yes, and for always being the helpers in helping your communities and the law enforcement community as well. With the resiliency program, we saw an exponential influence of calls to cop. We know the program is working. I know Cherie Castellano will be talking today about some of the results from last year and the exponential increase of calls that we had to cop to cop. The exponential increase of calls to and from cop to cop this year as we've dealt with the pandemic and all the other issues that law enforcement have had to deal with. And you have been, and your group and the chaplains who have taken the resiliency program training have been with us every step of the way. And you are an important part of this program, because although the communications between a law enforcement officer and a regular RPO are confidential, sometimes the officer just does not want to talk to another officer. And when we're training our RPOs, the 850 of them that have had the training as of this point, we tell them, when in fact you have an officer like that, then reach out to a chaplain. And you have received the same training with a few minor modifications that Gary has done to the program that the officers are getting with regards to that. With that, however, is you taking care of yourself as well. And I know Cherie is going to talk a little bit about that and some of the exciting things that I believe Cop to Cop's going to be doing over the next year with the Chaplains program to ensure your mental health is preserved and taken care of. Because of confidentiality, I'm sure all of you can respect, because we always get asked this question, are there success stories? And the answer is absolutely. I can guarantee that there have been, through this past year, success stories with the resiliency program and with your involvement with the program. I know for a fact that this program has saved lives. Confidentiality tells me I can't tell you which lives have been saved or even the jurisdictions, because we protect the confidentiality of those that have availed themselves of the program. This has saved marriages. This has saved people. This is the program itself and those that have availed themselves of that in simply changing culture, and your involvement in changing culture here in law enforcement in the state of New Jersey has changed lives. And that false narrative of an officer has to choose between being a cop and being happy, you're wiping that away, because you can actually be both under what we teach at the resiliency program. COVID hit us hard. COVID, doing a live training in COVID was practically just couldn't happen. That being said, we have still trained over 850 RPOs as of 6/1 of this year and all 950 will be trained by the end of September. So we are on pace to have all the RPOs trained, and all of the officers, all 38,000 officers, will be trained in the 2-day training program by the beginning of January of 2023. I've been to some of your chaplains trainings, and I know Dave has as well. We try to hit all of them, and it's good seeing all of you there. And I highly encourage those that have not participated yet to sign up for the course, because in helping to save someone else, you actually may be saving yourself, and also seeing things a little differently with the tenets that we teach with the resiliency program. Your role is extremely important with the program. There is no resiliency program without the police chaplains and your group and you individually, for all of the reasons that I previously indicated and Gary indicated. And you know, there's this old Japanese proverb that I remember very early on in the pandemic, with one of the statewide broadcasts that the Attorney General did. I talked about, and a friend gave this to me, that you can't pour from an empty vessel. It's a Japanese proverb. And now more than ever, that's accurate. As we get beyond this pandemic, I'm sure Cherie is going to talk to you about, right, you 6 months, 8 months, as we get back to normal, you actually have time to process everything that you've had to deal with over the last 18 months, and taking self-reflection and time for yourself in dealing with all of your trauma and all of your stress that the Attorney General has talked about. With Resilient Minds on the front line, I know that we're very interested in collaborating with you. As fate would have it, I have a meeting with Gary tomorrow to talk about the future and collaboration between Resilient Minds and the Police Chaplains Association. And anything that we can provide, we are more than happy to do so. The last point that I want to do in introducing Dave Leonardis is Dave Leonardis is the Acting Chief Resiliency Officer for the state of New Jersey. Dave is a friend of me, obviously, a professional, a true professional, someone that all of us know in the state. I always say that there's 6 degrees of separation, and usually Dave Leonardis is somewhere in the middle there. From his continuous outreach efforts to resiliency and being involved with the resiliency program with me as we've gone along through this process, to everything else that Dave has done in his career, I know that he will do an unbelievable job as the Acting Chief Resiliency Officer, and I believe he's your liaison to the actual to this entity, to DCJ. So Dave will be taking point on resiliency moving forward, and the program is left in his very capable hands. On my end, it's a pleasure working with all of you in the past. I look forward to working with all of you in the future. I wish all of you the best of luck. Be safe, be strong, be resilient, and please, please, please take time for yourself, because you can't pour from an empty vessel.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you for those kind words, Rob. I guess that lunch that I bought paid off a long way, right? Anyway, it's good to be here. It's good to be at another Chaplains Conference. I'm sorry that I can't see your smiling faces, because you always give us so much energy, but we're doing, the best that we can. And next year we'll be back again, seeing each other in person. So, but it's good to be here today.
Hey, Dave, you want to just turn on your camera?
Yeah. Okay. My camera. Okay, let me try it again. Looks like it is on. There you go.
There you go.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right, great. Thank you. So I think most of you know that I am the representative to the New Jersey Chaplains Program for the New Jersey Division of Criminal Justice. And this is my 8th annual Chaplains Conference. I've been at all 8 and been there since we did the first one in Atlantic City, and I'm glad to be here. I think most of you have my contact information. I send out information as I did the flyer for this event, and that has all my contact information on it. But I just want to assure you that if you have any questions when it comes to resiliency, don't hesitate to give me a call. You know, that's what I'm here for. And I'd be happy to talk to you, as I always am. So, and as Rob said, if you haven't been to a resiliency program, I strongly recommend that you do, for a lot of different reasons. But my 30 years with New Jersey State Police, I found that troopers and police officers always rely on chaplains. And, you know, you play such an important role with officers. You know, you're credible, and they know that they can go to you when they have a problem. So this is a perfect opportunity with the resiliency program. So any questions you have, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Just to bring you up to date on a couple of other things. As you know, I'm training outreach liaison for Division of Criminal Justice. So working on a lot of the CLEAR courses, and CLEAR, as I'm sure you know, is community law enforcement affirmative relations, community and law enforcement relations. There's courses out there right now that officers can take on the LGBTQ community, on the Orthodox community, on understanding drug addiction. We're working on a series of other courses that I wanted to make you aware of, working with the Black community, the Asian community, the Latino community, the Sikh community, Muslim, Hindu. We're also working on an updated course on special needs and, you know, dealing with folks with special needs and mental health issues, as we are with implicit bias. So all those are kind of, they're in the development stage right now, and they will be out within months. As I mentioned, I do the community outreach liaison work for working with all of the prosecutors' community outreach folks. Gary Holden sits on that committee, and he's a representative. So, and I know he brings the information back to you folks. I also work with all of the bias crime liaisons throughout the state in the prosecutor's offices, you know, the attorneys and detectives on bias. And that's something that you should be aware of. Those numbers on bias incidents since COVID started are, you know, they're on the rise. This year is even greater than last year, and the numbers continue to rise. And there's obviously so much stress out there, and it's not just on police officers. It seems like it's on everyone. So that's where I think you play such an important role. Lastly, I just want to say that if your department would like to have a community event, whatever it is, community outreach on bias awareness, I'd be help with that. And that's what we do. Also, if your department is thinking about starting a community coalition, you know, I'd be happy to help. I work with a lot of departments, police departments, on starting their own coalition. So, you know, you have any questions on any of these topics, don't hesitate to call. I'm always happy to speak to you guys and gals. And lastly, thank you for all you do. You know, you play an important role of bringing the community, law enforcement together. You're that intermediary, and you also play an important role with police officers. As I said, you are a trusted agent. So thank you for all you do, and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave and Rob. I appreciate your friendship, and certainly you are friends to chaplains, and I appreciate all the work that you do. And Rob, we're excited about your new opportunity, a new venture, and our prayers are with you, and prayers are with you, Dave, as we move along and work together to help our communities and help our officers. Now gives me a really great pleasure to introduce Cherie Castellano. Most of you know Cherie with Cop to Cop, and Cherie and I've worked on a number of things together over the years, and chaplains are a vital part of Cop to Cop, and she'll share more about that, but they really are a vital part of it. And now we have the new RISE program. We've been doing some webinars, and some of you joined us with that, and we're planning to do others in the future. So, Cherie, we're excited about your presentation today, and share with us the incredible things that are taking place.
Thank you so much, Gary. It's such an honor to get to work beside all of you, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to do the work we've done together and share some of the information this morning. So I said a little prayer, and as always, you led us in prayer this morning before I'm presenting. So I feel excited about the information to share. So I think with that, my weakness is technology. So I'm going to hope that my screen is showing my slides, and I can get into talking a little bit about the work that we're doing. So Brandon, am I okay to go off camera and just focus on my slides? Is that a yes? Okay. So the name of my presentation is called Chaplains Rise. It's the impact of COVID-19 on chaplains and first responders. And really, the idea here is that for us, we want to talk about your resilience, your recovery, and resources. And it's been an honor to get through this time together. Chaplains are first responders. We know that. You know that. But I think in the context of us supporting first responders, it's really important to make that statement and make that claim. So we've been able to do some work because you are first responders together during this crisis, during COVID. I want to just read this briefly. You are a miracle walking. I greet you with wonder in a work which seems to own your joy and your imagination. You have chosen to be free every day as a practice. I can never know the struggles you went through to get here, but I know you have swum upstream, and at times it has been lonely. I want you to know I honor the choices you made in solitude. I honor the work you've done to belong. I honor your commitment to that which is larger than yourself and your journey to love the particular container of life that is you. You are enough. Your work is enough. You are needed. Your work is sacred. You are here, and I am grateful. So I want to begin with a thank you. Thank you to Gary and Rob and Dave and Tara and Bryn and the Attorney General and everyone involved in all of this work together. But I would also like to hear from you in the chat about what you're grateful for, because I think when we start in gratitude, we always start in the right space. So for those of you who know me or don't know me, I have been working to support first responders like you for over 20 years. I'm now the director of Rutgers University Behavioral Health Care's National Center for Peer Support, which started with Cop to Cop over 20 years ago. After 9/11, the crisis prompted a need to create peer programs for other groups like Vet to Vet and Fire to Fire and Teacher to Teacher, and all those other peer programs were designed. Happy to say today we have a national center with, I think there are 18 peer support programs, millions of dollars of funding. We have about 250 peer counselors on the phones helping people, which is a blessing. But we're really targeted on high-risk populations. I wouldn't do, a program that was for people who worked, in a corporation. It's really for groups that serve others and are exposed to crisis and need access and are culturally brought together by strength. We use peers and clinicians. We have done evidence-based research that our peer support works. It is suicide prevention. It is employee assistance enhancement. But it really is a prevention, intervention, and post-prevention approach to helping people who are first responders with their quality of life. So the reason why we got to start working more officially with Gary, although we've always been working with the Police Chaplains Group and of course the Attorney General's Office and the RPO program, is because Rutgers got a FEMA grant to offer COVID crisis counseling. And the name of the project is called RISE, New Jersey First Responders COVID Hope and Healing Program. And what it does is this is not a peer support line per se. It's really just funded during this COVID crisis to offer help to first responders through a telephone number, resilience webinars, counseling groups, and resources. We understood that we needed to make up a team that would really represent culturally who we were going to serve if we were going to include chaplains in this. So it's myself, Gary, and Michelle Julian, a clinician who I've worked with in the Duke Clergy Health Project and over at Rutgers. But what this partnership has done is allowed us to create liaisons, which this is fresh off the presses. We now have RISE, Rutgers, Chaplain, Peer Ambassadors. Gary, of course, is our statewide leader. In North Jersey, we have Chaplain Gonzalez. In Central Jersey, Chaplain Vasquez. And in South Jersey, Chaplain Fossbender. So we're blessed to actually have official ambassadors. What we did is we designed these webinars just for chaplains. We got FEMA to understand that chaplains are first responders and deserve this COVID resource. And so we designed a series of webinars that I'm going to talk about in a minute, but that have been very successful, thanks to Gary and all of you. To give you some numbers, we've had over 200 chaplains attend our RISE webinars with expert panel members talking about the impact of COVID on chaplains. We've done over 1,800 outreach calls to all of you and about almost 3,000 emails. But we asked a survey when we started, like this was back in January, when it comes to your mental and emotional well-being, how are you feeling right now? 55% of you said good. Have you or another staff member in your community, dealt with the topic of mental or emotional health within the last month? 53 said yes, you're talking about that to the people you're serving. Has COVID affected you so far? 37% of you said you felt more disconnected. And during the past month, and again, this was a few months ago, how often did you feel happy? And 50% of you said almost every day. You are inherently resilient through your faith. But this webinar series kicked off with that initial webinar so powerful that we decided to do one every month. So what we did is we used the UPenn Positive Psychology Resiliency Skills sort of framework similar to the RPO, FBI, NA stuff that you all learned. These are the 6 skills: self-awareness, self-regulation, mental agility, strength of character, connection, and optimism. We also had done some work, I had done this in my volunteer hat, to work with Duke University Clergy Health. They're leading the country in understanding the impact of mental health challenges on clergy. And they've done a ton of studies since 2007 on how to make a flourishing clergy. What they found originally in their studies was that clergy were having high rates of medical problems, diabetes, asthma, angina, obesity. They were suffering from depression, and they also did a good job with their positive mental health. One key lesson that we learned, and Rob just so profoundly shared it, but we learned from the Duke Clergy Health team that taking care of oneself is not selfish, but that clergy actually need repeated permission to care for themselves. It's actually an act of worship that honors God when you care for yourself. And the human body is God-given, even when imperfect. So the scripture they reference is Jesus said to them, fill the jars with water, and they filled them to the brim. So the concept that you need to fill up that jar to pour out. Another clergy health initiative lesson learned that we wanted to sort of combine into the self-care work we're doing with you now is that clergy are humans, that the sacred calling leads clergy to overextend themselves, that improvements in both physical health and mental health can occur in small daily changes, and it helps if clergy support each other and healthy behaviors can be sustained. So we look at these 6 skills we kind of framed out in our RISE program, and besides self-awareness, and we understood from the Duke clergy team and from your feedback that you knew what was happening with the impact of COVID, we have to think next about self-regulation. What is self-regulation? It's the ability to change one's thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and physiology in the service of a desired outcome. So if you're self-regulating, one of the keys to self-regulating is the power of prayer and self-control. And I'm not going to teach any of you about that. You're the masters in that space, but you understand how important your prayer life is to your self-regulation. The challenges we found around pandemic fatigue during these webinar series is that pandemic fatigue is what's described when people are currently sort of just like fried. That a quote that says, we're all tired, our brains, our bodies are tired, we are habituating to the anxiety in the only way human beings know, getting used to it and becoming less anxious. The challenge is that when you have pandemic fatigue, you might lean into psychological numbing. And psychological numbing is a defense mechanism that is not really a great thing to do over the long haul. So we just want to bring that to folks' awareness. The goals for self-regulation is to regulate our mind, regulate our body, regulate our spirit, regulate our service, and regulate our emotions for peace. The Duke Flourishing Clergy initiatives found that creating boundaries were the most important thing to allow clergy to self-regulate. This idea of self-regulation and creating boundaries is, we heard some great feedback. This was just a quote from one of the chaplains who told us that not only is it important to have boundaries, but maybe to have counseling if you're a clergy. Other RISE resilience skills next are mental agility. That's basically the ability to look at situations from multiple perspectives and to think creatively and flexibly when things are constantly changing, which we know was true for all of you as chaplains, especially during the pandemic. The shift changes, the threats of violence, the increased need for hypervigilance, the distance, the hugging or virtual hugging, the higher exposure to traumatic events, and even the exposure during the pandemic, I think, to contracting COVID are real challenges that you've all faced. The goals for mental agility that we cover in the webinar, and again, these are the short versions, but to manage your stress by being more present in the time of crisis, having your mental clarity be a focus for your overall resilience. And the way that Duke reports the flourishing clergy do that most often is to stay working in alignment with a greater purpose. The world, the chaos, the political and community environment can draw us away. And so continuing to work in alignment with a greater purpose now more than ever seems key to your mental agility. There's other things you can do, those brain games. We have options on our webinars to learn new skills, puzzles, breathing exercises, ways to improve your mental agility. I think under strength of character, this one was easy to cover with all of you. Strength of character is the ability to use one's top strengths to engage authentically, overcome challenges, and create a life aligned with one's values. So wisdom, courage, humanity, transcendence, justice, and moderation are just a few of the strengths of character that we think about. We ask you to think in your self-awareness space again, what are your top 3 strengths? These are just a few of the character strengths that we looked at when we looked at strength of character in our webinars for chaplains. Obviously, spirituality is a big one. Humility came forward, honesty, and bravery, I think, as well as perseverance for many of you. So flourishing clergy finds that intentional health behaviors help you with this skill. Daily affirmations, the I am statements. I know so many of you do examines or do other kinds of spiritual direction that create routines for you that not only help the pathways in your brain, but your heart and your spirit. Last, we're going to talk about connection now. That's the space that I find, my God and my faith and my love and my spirit. Connection is the ability to build and maintain strong, trusting relationships. What does connection look like? Well, obviously it looks different for you pre-COVID and post-COVID and during COVID, but connection is what you do. You are ambassadors of connection, right? Trust is your vehicle of change. People share with you honestly. They reflect with you. They understand, you understand boundaries. So you are masters of connection. Flourishing clergy finds that although you're wonderful at connecting other people, that maybe connecting to each other is a challenge. Your busy schedules, your lack of self-care and self-focus, your selflessness, maybe to a fault at sometimes, can make it difficult for you to reach out and share with others and to each other. Our next webinar is going to be on optimism. That'll cover the 6 skills that we'll begin with, and that's on June 18th from 10 to 11. But I want to talk a little bit about what's going to happen as this RISE program ends, because some exciting news, again, thanks to Rob and Dave and the Attorney General. We have continued to expand in supporting first responders in peer support, not just around the COVID stuff with the FEMA funding. So COP to COP continues to grow, as Rob mentioned, but we also got funding from the Attorney General's office to do a resilience program officer line, an RPO line that was specifically for the master resiliency trainers and the RPOs who are out serving the officers in their communities. And we've been given permission to include the chaplains in our RPO service program when this COVID line ends. So the COVID line goes till December, but we're allowed to have all of you call in on the RPO line and begin to develop peer support for you. as resilience program officers and liaisons. We have a corrections line for you blue. We have a fire and EMS lifeline that starts in July. And then of course we have this RISE COVID line that is not a peer line, but provides free counseling. And we even have a national pilot with Cop to Cop that was funded by the International Association of Chiefs of Police. So as we grow, we just want to make sure you understand, because over the years, I think Cop to Cop started off as a suicide line and then turned into so much more. But what happens with the RPO line and the Cop to Cop line is that you call the number. We can give you resources or whatever you need, but really you get assessed for peer support. We ask you at the end of the first call, do you want a peer counselor assigned to you? And that person then calls you back every week, every day, every month, and talks to you and helps you with your personal goals, your wellness goals, your resilience, your mental health, your resources, your physical health, whatever you need. And we average about 6 months of peer counseling calls until we get to the place where people say, okay, I'm good, and have a better quality of life. We can do assessments over the phone if you're worried about somebody you're talking to. We have licensed clinicians, we have a special network, and we've added physicians and many of you to our network. So we're referring to you, but you can also get resources from us. We do debriefings. Again, Gary has led us in training for critical incident stress management work together. So we have COP clinicians and peers doing crisis response, but we really want to partner more closely with you as chaplains. And we have the resilience training that we're aligned and following the RPO team to add to the beautiful work that they're doing with the resilience officers across the state. The RISE program is going to continue to get pushed out to you. Many of you, I know about 650 of you are getting flyers and emails from us. So you'll see these flyers about the free crisis counseling for COVID. There's a website that has all the webinars on it. So just want you to see all the bells and whistles if you want to jump on the website. But I think we really want to emphasize this idea that, you know, you are at the heart of keeping our first responders whole. You know, your ministry of presence, whether it was virtual or in person, is a gateway to hope. We think our peer support work is contagious compassion, and we've learned that from watching all of you. We want to say to you that you're greater than you know, my favorite Mother Teresa quote, but that we're really excited to partner to not only do these webinars and COVID crisis counseling, but to actually create peer-to-peer support, chaplain to chaplain for you under this RPO work as we work together, because you deserve that support and more for all that you've done. And I think just thank you for your service. This is the RISE number, but we're pushing out the RPO number to you too. And again, it's a blessing and an honor to work beside and for all of you. So stay blessed.
Sure, you're still there. You're still there. Don't forget, folks, questions that you want to submit. We can try to answer those a little bit later. But one of my questions for you, Cherie, is as we launch our ambassadors, that we listed the names of the ambassadors and trainings that we're going to do more of the CISM crisis intervention trainings, make that available. So any
Yes.
more you want to share about that? We're going to develop some more wellness trainings. This is all for chaplains now.
Yes, just
to
for
help.
chaplains. Yes, Gary. Yep, informed by you. We're going to do our first RPO/chaplain webinar in July, on July 28th. So we'll be sending out flyers to your chaplain group and people here via email. We're going to continue to work beside the RPOs and beside you, and use the resources from RISE. We're going to have a CISM training together in August. So we'll have the webinar together in July, we'll have the training together in August, and then lots more planned so that there'll at least be an activity every month, in addition to developing this peer-to-peer support for all of you, as well as the COVID crisis counseling stuff.
Cherie, thank you. Thank you so much. This is the book. You can see this. It's called Flourish by Seligman, Dr. Seligman at the University of Penn. So much of the resiliency program and all the different divisions of it and areas where this is used comes out of this. praise for flourish, how to learn to flourish. And those of us that are clergy, chaplains, our faith helps us to flourish, but these other techniques are vitally important that helps us to continue to get to that next level of flourishing in our lives and then helping others to flourish as well. So thank you so much, Cherie, and we'll keep we're going to let you know about the dates coming up at the end. The date of the crisis intervention course in August, we'll let you know about that. So if some of you have not received that CISM training, that'll be the group crisis intervention training. You can avail yourself of that. So we'll let you know that as we move along. So at this time, we're going to show another video, and I'm excited that the Attorney General's office has this Excellence in Policing program, and they've given out a number of awards in 2020, and one of those was to a chaplain. Now, there's all kinds of chaplains that could receive this award, but this chaplain is so worthy of it and the things that he has done. And so at this time, the recipient, you'll see the recipient here of the Excellence in Policing Awards, the Chaplain of the Year, given by the Attorney General's office.
I think initially one of my roles was just to be available for the police association, the Chiefs Association. But then they recognized that I had a little bit more to offer as far as helping them to change the tone and tenor of policing in the county. Not only did I function and try to sort of look at the chaplaincy, not just being there and opening up the meeting in prayer and closing with the benediction. I felt the Lord was leading us to do more. And the more I engaged in conversation with the executive board, it was obvious that more could be done with the chaplaincy program. One of which is that I could make myself available to the police officers and all the municipalities that did not have chaplains to help them just dealing with workplace anxiety, dealing with marriage and divorce issues, dealing with drugs and alcoholism, just dealing with the humanity of just serving as one who's is entrusted to protect and serve the community. I think that was really a very important piece because that was my heart. My heart is in pastoral care and counseling that was my seminary degree and focus. And my heart is really helping in relationships. And so because there was so much happening in our society, where the narratives of police, their perspective to especially the Black community and the Black community's perspective to policing, I thought we could really grow the chaplaincy program to speak to some of the issues that were obviously being spoken of through the prism of local media or national media. And usually those perceptions are not reality. So that led us to be more involved. The police association, police chief association has sort of allowed me to develop other partnerships with the community. We started partnerships with a lot of youth programs where we have the Lakewood Blue Claws game each year. We just take them at no cost to anyone, to the students. And we take a group of chiefs and a group of young kids from the Boys and Girls Club throughout the county. But part of it is that each chief and each policeman has to partner with one of the students. So they're sort of hand in hand asking each other questions. And then from there, we have that grew, and we started what we refer to as Wishing Upon a Star initiative. For our meetings in November and October, we would get each police chief to select a student, name of a student, which was given to us by the Boys and Girls Club of Monmouth County. And they would go out and actually go shopping for that student. And then during the installation dinner of the chief's function, what would happen is all the chiefs would have to bring the toys at that time. So you would see over 1,000 toys before they would get to the reception. And all the chiefs were really buying in, excited about bringing the toys and being a part of it. So our first year, we partnered with Jersey Shore Rescue Mission. And we had about 300 families that came. Pilgrim, our missionary ministry and outreach ministry, we provided the meal where every family member had a beautiful first-class meal. And then every chief, so you just saw them, they all came in their uniforms. It was pretty incredible. They handed out toys to everyone that they sponsored. And it was just a moving experience. It allowed the community which was the goal from my perspective, to see the chiefs and see police through a different prism. When I was younger, I had some issues. Let's put it like that. Yeah, I had to. My mama would tell me I had a lot of issues, but I had some issues and got into some trouble. And one time I got into, yeah, it was stupid stuff, but we got involved in. And I remember when the police officer came, they came, and I had to spend some time. I was real young, so they were really trying to prove a point more than anything else, putting the fear of God in me. But the one police officer, his name was Frank Naviglia. I'll never forget him. He was a detective. I think he's passed on by now, but this was a policeman, a white policeman, telling me that he was going to let me go. I was wrong. I was guilty. They could have, it could have went a whole different way. But he just said, remember this moment, because when it comes a time for you to help someone else, I hope and pray that you will do it with no reservation. I remember that policeman because he made a difference in my life. And I work in chaplaincy with law enforcement because I believe I can make a difference. So I appreciate y'all having me, okay?
This, if you're not aware, this is Pastor Terrence Porter, and he's a chaplain with the County Chiefs Association in Monmouth County. And we have talked a number of times, and it's exciting. Congratulations for you receiving the Chaplain of the Year award, a worthy award that I'm just so thankful that you were able to receive this because of all the good work you're doing in the community and all the good work you're doing with the Chiefs Association and all the chiefs there in Monmouth County. So God bless you, Pastor, and thanks for sharing this morning as well. We're going to go at this time to what we call the use of force presentation. And this presentation is taking place by Alex Abu, and Alex is the deputy chief deputy assistant prosecutor in the Essex County Prosecutor's Office. And so he's going to be sharing with us this whole presentation on use of force so that we as chaplains will understand more what this is all about so we can help others as we move along with the job that we're called to do. Thank you, Alex.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, so again, my name is Alex Albu. I'm an assistant prosecutor here in Essex County, New Jersey for our prosecutor's office over here. I'm the deputy chief overseeing our professional standards bureau, or in other words, our internal affairs unit. So just as a little background, essentially what we do is we oversee all of the things that fall under internal affairs, be it from the obvious of any police misconduct to our continuous kind of early warning monitoring of officers, drug testing, as well as general supervisory and legal advisory issues over here. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is really, frankly, one of the biggest, I think, changes that's happened in New Jersey law enforcement policing in many years. And I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint in just one moment, and we'll get started. Okay, just in a moment, I just want to make sure that you can see this. All right, can everyone see that?
Yes,
okay.
You're good.
Great, okay. All right, so the use of force policy, again, is something that hasn't been updated in about 20 years in New Jersey. That's why I say it really is one of the most significant changes to law enforcement in New Jersey in years. It really isn't only a positive update for the community, which it definitely is, but it's also a positive for officers. There's, without question, as already been touched upon, especially in the resiliency section this morning, there's arguably no more stressful moment for an officer than really an encounter that may require the use of force. So in addition to a number of significant changes, the new policy really provides officers with more tools and really guidance as to the use of force and frankly how to avoid the use of force entirely, which is good not only for officers but also for citizens, as previously mentioned. I think in some ways, and I think this should make us all proud as far as what the Attorney General has done in New Jersey and really nationwide. I think some of the best evidence of how forward-thinking this new policy is that if you take a look at drafts of other policies that are circulating around the country, drafts that have come out since the New Jersey policy has come out to the public, what you'll find actually is a lot of the language is borrowed from our policy. So I think that's always a good sign. If it's obviously it's a time right now when a lot of agencies, cities, states around the country are looking to revise these policies. And the fact that we see that that is getting borrowed and looked at as a model, our New Jersey policy, I think it's a great sign and says a lot about really the process that led up to this use of force, new use of force policy. So to that end, when we talk about that process, really the process also came out of this 2121 project, this community policing project. So this is a project that the Attorney General established in 2018. The goal was to strengthen relationships between law enforcement officers and their communities and really bring together lots of different people from different backgrounds on a variety of topics. So it wasn't just use of force. There were other topics such as immigration, opioid abuse, and overdoses. So many other topics, but I think the benefit of this and what we've seen is that by getting a large group of people, a variety of interests and a variety of stakeholders into the process, we then get a policy, like we did in this case with the use of force policy, that is representative of many more interests. And it's just not just one side or not one piece of the puzzle when we look at our community and our state at large. So I think really, and what you'll see going forward is that is a continued emphasis as there have been continued listening sessions and efforts to gain input from various groups around the state. So when we talk about what are the pillars really that underpin the excellence in policing initiative, what we're talking about are really three areas: professionalism, accountability, and transparency. So when we talk about professionalism, we're talking about training. The policy is great, but it's only as good as the training that follows it. And with that, the PTC, or the Police Training Commission, an overhaul of that, and they've been on board with it and very supportive of it, has been a huge part of that going forward as well. Officer resiliency, a huge component that was already touched upon today. But again, your officers are only going to be effective and be able to be out there and give 100% if they have the support they need throughout the rest of their stress and everything else that comes into being an officer. And to that end as well, being able to actually address officers prior to issues becoming larger or overblown. So in that sense, the early warning system for at-risk officers has really proved to be, again, something where, again, the Attorney General isn't just focused on, again, just trying to reform policing purely for the purpose of the public and the community, but also with an eye toward making this a better profession for the officers themselves, a safer profession, a profession with more support. So when we talk about accountability, that's another key pillar in the new use of force policy. We're talking about ensuring independent investigations of officer-involved shootings. So again, for quite some time now, from 2019, we've had the Attorney General actually come out to shootings throughout the state whenever there is a fatality involving any civilian throughout the state. We also have, again, a focus on creating a more robust police disciplinary process and more oversight over it. In conjunction with that, a proposal to actually provide police licensure. Just like other fields, you have a license that's issued, it can also be revoked. And that's really, I think, an important component to ensuring that as part of creating a more professional policing culture, you have a system also where officers are held accountable in the same way that everyone in every other profession is, frankly. And also an important component, as we've had civilian review boards becoming more common, is setting some minimum standards for civilian review boards to ensure that, number one, they're not interfering with the internal affairs process, that they're complementary, and that they're being enacted and carried out consistently throughout the state. And then finally, a huge component here is transparency. I think one of the things you'll hear from the public most often is the desire for more transparency. So ensuring, first and foremost, the public release of police use of force footage is huge. And that's something that's been a strong commitment by the Attorney General and the county prosecutor's offices. Creating a system for timely disclosure of impeachment material. We're talking about anything that could potentially impeach an officer's credibility. There's been a robust system that's really ahead of most other states in the country for proactively ensuring that we're getting that information out there to defendants and their attorneys. And also collecting and publishing statewide data on police use of force, which again, as we're talking about the use of force policy, that's really been an enormous effort to try to collect all this data and put it in a form, an online form that not only agencies such as myself, I can access it, analyze data and trends, but so that the public can access it as well in a real-time form where they can see trends and see how things are developing in their own neighborhoods. So what are the core principles when we talk about the use of force policy? There's really 7 core principles that we're talking about. And really, these are fundamental changes in many ways from the old policy. They were not articulated in this way in the old policy. So 1, de-escalation. You wouldn't even have seen that in the old policy. It was not a focus. It was not mentioned there in the way that it's addressed here. So de-escalation and force as a last resort. Core principle 1. The sanctity of human life. Again, that we respect and value all human life. 3, reasonable, necessary, and proportional force. 4, deadly force as a last resort. Actually, it's articulated as an absolute last resort. 5, the duty to intervene when another officer is using inappropriate force. 6, duty to render medical assistance. And 7, duty to report and review uses of force and holding officers, again, accountable for that duty. So how was the revision process actually carried out? It was led by our Office of Integrity and Accountability, or more commonly known as OPIA, led by our director over there, Tom Eicher, who brings a wealth of experience from the U.S. Attorney's Office in police misconduct cases and oversight, in an oversight role as well. It draws on input, as I indicated, from stakeholders and best practices from around the country and the world. Again, I think what was really good here was that not only was there input from people, but we did look at models elsewhere that worked really well. And I think that's always the best way to go. If something works excellent elsewhere, let's borrow it, let's implement it. And that's exactly what happened. There was a public comment portal that was launched also, which allowed the public to submit questions, comments, concerns that they had as the new use of force policy was drafted. And as I indicated earlier, the Attorney General and our county prosecutor's offices held listening sessions in all 21 counties to gain as much possible insight as possible into the new policy. So when we talk about the policy itself, it was announced back in December of 2020, taking effect later this year, and it applies to all 38,000 of New Jersey's law enforcement officers. Again, one of the unique things that we have in New Jersey with our structure with the Attorney General's office is that we have a system where the Attorney General can really quickly implement these directives or these changes, because once he enacts a policy such as a use of force policy, it has to be implemented by every law enforcement agency in the state, which is not what you see in many other states with different structures. And combined with that policy enactment, he's also able to roll out the training and the monitoring piece, which again are crucial. The policy is great, but it's only worth anything really if you have the training piece there and the officers are receiving the training that they need, and you're also monitoring the officers to ensure that use of force is in fact being used appropriately. And when we talk about the training, there's an active effort right now, even prior to a multi-day in-person training later this year, which is going to be situation-based, and really in that sense also very forward-thinking. We are rather through the Attorney General's office already rolling out some video trainings to make the officers already, or help the officers already become familiar, accustomed to the policy, even prior to going into that formal training later in the year. So as we talk about the core principles, I'm going to put a video on for you that just kind of breaks them down a little bit more. I kind of just spelled them out for you as bullet points, those 7, but there's a video that the Attorney General's office has put out, which I think is very helpful, and I'm going to play that for you so you get a little bit more detail as far as what each of these pillars stand for.
New Jersey's new use of force policy is built around 7 core principles that will make the public safer, that will make police officers safer, and that will build community trust. Let's break them down. As law enforcement officers, our mission is to preserve and protect the safety and the lives of all people, regardless of who they love, how they worship, or what they look like. Before ever using force, officers should employ de-escalation tactics and techniques to effectively bring an incident under control, while also promoting public safety and minimizing risks. When self-defense or the defense of another is necessary, officers must use only as much force as is necessary and proportional to the threat. Even where force is authorized, deadly force shall only be used as an absolute last resort and in strict compliance with the new policy. Improperly or unlawfully using force will not be tolerated in New Jersey. Every officer has a duty to prevent, stop, and report this misconduct immediately. After any officer uses force, they are required to provide medical assistance, request emergency aid if needed, and monitor injured individuals. Every use of force must be reported to our statewide use of force portal and must undergo a meaningful command level review, including review by the law enforcement chief executive.
All right, so as indicated, the training component is going to be huge to all of this. As much as those core principles, seem at first blush pretty simple and clear, the policy itself is incredibly detailed. To give you an idea, I think there were only about 8 or 9 terms that were defined in the old policy. There's, I believe, over 30 in the new policy. So again, a lot more detailed. The idea is to provide more guidance to officers, so the training component is going to be huge. And to that end, the Attorney General has invested significant resources into this training effort to ensure that, again, all 38,000 officers are going to really feel equipped and not feel like they're going out there without having the tools that they need to actually carry out this policy and ensure that they follow through with it. Another huge part of the new use of force policy and initiative, really, as far as this Excellence in Policing project is concerned, is the use of force reporting portal. So New Jersey is now tracking every use of force by an officer anywhere in the state. There's actually not only that there will be a version of the portal that's public, but if you actually go to the New Jersey Attorney General's website, you can take a look at the beta that's on there. So njoag.com/force or .org rather, I believe, /force. We'll get to that website at the end and I'll have it up on the screen. You can actually go there and actually get a sense of what this website looks like and how useful this database is as far as being able to track officers. But again, very helpful. There's 70 different types of data points that we can use to analyze the officer's use of force and the incident overall, so that we have as good of a picture as possible as far as use of force, and also really ensuring that it's consistent across the state. I think that was a large part of the problem that we had before, was that there really was no consistency in how use of force was reported. Every agency did it a little bit different, using a model form that was modified to suit the particular agency, which what we found often led to disparate reporting of incidents. So by having the reporting form standardized with all this additional detail, again, what we're doing is creating a situation where we really get a better sense, comparing apples to apples, how force is being used around the state. And what I'll do is give you another video that you can take a look at to have a better sense of how this portal works and how detailed it in fact is. So just bear with me one moment and I'll get this video started for you.
Without a statewide system for capturing use of force data, New Jersey's 20-year-old use of force policy was being interpreted inconsistently, resulting in data that wasn't meaningful or useful for analysis. But over the last few years, law enforcement leaders from across the state came together and agreed that we could do better. The Attorney General's Use of Force portal is a new, first-of-its-kind, statewide electronic reporting system that every officer in New Jersey must use to report details of every use of force. Officers simply log into the web-based system following a use of force incident and complete the form, which must be approved and reviewed by a supervisor. Included in the online form are 5 tabs that capture information about the officer, the subject against whom force was used, the types and reasons force was used, injuries, and a number of other data points. The portal also has tools that will allow our county prosecutors' offices and the Attorney General's office to analyze this data, which will be useful in detecting excessive force, improving policies and training, and identifying any disparities in how force is used. And early next year, we'll be launching a public version of the portal so you can see how we're doing. Because transparency and accountability are critical to ensuring that all law enforcement agencies in our state can be measured against the best of them. This portal is yet another crucial component of our work that advances best-in-class policing and that can be a blueprint for the nation to follow.
All right, so in addition to the use of force portal, one other thing I think really important to mention are also the mental health updates that have come out with this use of force policy. What we all have seen from personal experience working in this area and being involved in law enforcement is the extent to which mental health issues play a role in various encounters that police officers have. So to that end, there was a directive that was issued 20-14, which established countywide working groups to address mental health and special needs populations. And with that, each county is creating a mental health toolbox to assist law enforcement officers when they encounter individuals in a mental health crisis, which is perhaps far more common than many people in the public even realize. So this is, again, something else that as much as it's for the community, it's also providing officers with more tools so that they can better interact with these individuals and hopefully de-escalate and avoid the use of force to begin with by recognizing certain signs of mental health issues and being able to use different tactics as opposed to what might have previously been viewed simply as someone who's being aggressive and a threat to the officer. Here's that website that I mentioned earlier. It's actually njoag.gov/force. And that's where you could read more about the policy, as well as, again, take a look at that beta of the use of force reporting portal, the type of data that's collected. And from there, you can also find the entire Excellence in Policing project, which is really well worth taking a look at, given that it's really ahead of its time around the country as far as efforts that are being made by law enforcement. All right, thank you very much, and I'll hang on for any questions.
Okay, back again. Thank you, Alex. That really helps us to get a little better handle on what this is all about, because as chaplains, you know, we're out there in the streets, we're with the community, we're with the officers, and people have questions, and And I think this will help us a lot, and to be able to ask questions even in the future. So I appreciate it very much. When will this be implemented? Actually, is it being implemented now, or is it still coming on?
Yes, no, it's being implemented as we speak, as far as the training and getting everyone on board with it. Like I said, the virtual component of it, where it's being deployed to each officer, as fits their schedules at the departments, is happening shortly. And then from there, there's going to be the in-person training later in the year, and then by year's end, this is going to be in effect and be the new policy for the state that's in play.
Okay. Very good. There may be some questions that come in later. We'll pass them on to you in case anybody has any thoughts on it.
Right.
We're all learning, right? We're all learning.
Gary, Chaplain Holden, if I just jump in here. This is DAG Whittle. I just want to just make a note that I added some information in the chat. So the link that AP Albu mentioned is in the chat, njoag.gov/force. And we also have additional initiatives and reform efforts all in one place to make it a little bit easier for people. So that's the njoag.gov/policing. And when you go there, you will see so many initiatives and policies and directives that have been implemented by Attorney General Graywall. And, everyone has a little bit of issues when we have so much change at one time. So that's why it takes all of us working together to ensure that we raise the bar for public safety, but that we support one another throughout the whole process. And so that is the meat of why we bring this to you, so that you can continue to have those difficult conversations with your chiefs, with your law enforcement agencies, to see how you can better support them, and also bridge any divides that may be there with the communities that they serve. So I just wanted to note that. And I think we made a couple of questions, so just hang tight for 1 second. We'll see if we have anything that we can address. We're way ahead of schedule here.
We're doing good.
Yes.
So actually, we as chaplains are encouragers, and we need to continue to be encouragers even as these new programs come out. Encourage our officers.
So there is a question about what are the plans for changing the culture of policing under this new policy. And basically, all these policies, what I was just mentioning, all the policies that are listed on our use of force policing page, all of them working together are going to effectively change culture. It is not going to happen overnight. And I know many people are looking for instant change, but that doesn't happen. It happens over time. And so the seeds have been planted. And just like many of us who are of the Christian faith, we know that seeds get planted, and then we talk about another one comes and waters. And then we know who gives the increase. So we just have to stay involved, continue to be active, continue to be vocal, and move these policies forward.
Okay. Was there any other question?
Yes. So I'm looking at this other question here. When should chaplains get involved when use of force is involved? And again, I'm going to defer to you having those discussions with your chiefs to see how they can best use your services and your support. Sometimes some police departments use their chaplains to be on the scene. Isn't that correct, Chaplain Holden? To kind of help with community members and keep people calm.
Hospital, a lot of places where we can go where the need is.
Yep. So those are conversations that will come forward. And as we roll out the training for our law enforcement, I'm sure that there will be additional training for chaplains moving forward as well. That's the same thing that happened with resiliency. So thank you.
Thank you, Bren. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions, and keep them coming if you have some, and we can even try to answer them after our time together today. So I'm looking forward to our next panel. Seems like I've been on a lot of police chaplain panels recently, and I always enjoy them very much. And this particular panel really comes from those of us that serve with the state police. And we have Captain Buck, Philip Buck, who's the executive officer of the Office of Employee Relations and Community Outreach. And my good friend, Pastor Taylor, Chaplain Taylor, who is the senior chaplain, lead chaplain for the New Jersey State Police. And I'm a New Jersey State Police chaplain. In fact, I was just with Captain Buck on Saturday here in Vineland as we had a coffee with the cop with a lot of people that came. So we're gonna talk about resiliency. We're gonna talk about reform, but some of the things that we can do and are able to do as chaplains working with our law enforcement, and we're doing this in the state police probably now more than ever before. And so my first question really is, and I'll direct this to Captain Buck. How can chaplains help officers to be resilient in these days in which we live? So we've gone through COVID. We know the incidents that have happened out there in the communities, even this last summer. What more can we do from your perspective? And state police is a little different than the municipal department, but what can we do from your perspective in these days to help our officers even more?
So good morning, everyone, and thank you for that introduction, and thanks for allowing me to be a part of your conference. This is my first time. I heard this is the 8th annual, and again, so it's my pleasure, and I'm excited to be here. I want to talk all about our event last Saturday, and I'll save that for a little later. But it's been about 6 months in my assignment to my current office, and in March of this year, I think a important step in the training of our chaplaincy program took place, thanks to you, Chaplain Holden, and Pastor Taylor, and of course Mike Pellegrino, and we had all of police chaplains trained as RPOs. So taking that resiliency training step, getting an understanding of what law enforcement needs are out in the field to our chaplains in an up close and formal setting, like that resiliency training that you held for us was a very important first step. And enhancing that and continuing it is the challenge. So when we have those in the field moments, when our peer units and our EAP services and our medical services unit, the colonel himself calls on one of our chaplains to give that mental or spiritual support, whatever's needed on those particular scenes, or to our enlisted members, everyone within our chaplaincy program is trained and ready. I'll give one example that took place on Saturday, Chaplain Holden, that was a pleasant surprise to me, but so needed. So Pastor Holden, or Chaplain Holden, and I were at this coffee with the cop event just this past weekend, and as most of us on this conference probably heard, there was a critical incident down in Cumberland County a couple of weeks ago. And there was a lot of young troopers that were the first responders and the first on scene to what is being depicted as a mass shooting. And it so happens that a lot of those young troopers were working last weekend. We invited them to the Coffee with the Cop event, and they were able to meet and speak with Chaplain Holden. Not in the ideal arena or format, but it was important that that personal engagement happened. And Chaplain Holden and I were able to tell them in person that Chaplain Holden and our entire chaplaincy program is there for them. And the Cumberland County prosecutor, who's the chief investigator along with the state police in that particular event, was right there in support of that same message. So those in-person engagements, now that we're formally trained, is what I think is one of the more important steps we need to continue between law enforcement, state police, and beyond. That's the entire state in our chaplaincy program.
And from my perspective, it was a great day just interacting with them, just chit-chatting and letting them know we're there for them, and giving them our phone number, so if they needed to call later, they could certainly do that. And our chaplains do that. That's really what it's all about. But it's exciting to see how we're doing that with the state police, and that was a great example of it. And thanks for your leadership on that as well, Captain Buck. Chaplain Taylor, from your perspective, now you've been leading the state police chaplains for a little while now, and we had an incident back at the training academy this last summer where an officer was killed. And you don't have to talk about that necessarily, but the idea of what the chaplains are doing to help the officers.
Well, first of all, good morning. And earlier, I was listening. I heard about my dear friend retiring. So I'd like to congratulate him on his retirement. I'm looking forward to seeing him soon and other adventures that he will be doing. Because anyone knowing knows he don't sit still too long. Yep. But Gary, you're right. And good morning to you and everyone that's listening. Good morning to you. I pray that everything is going well with you. Like you said, there was a situation that hopefully never happened again, but we always say never. But a young man going through his regular routine training, got hurt, traumatized, wind up passing, but the chaplains were able to go in every day, not just going to the hospital, being with the family, which was very important that we had our chaplains there to be with the troopers' family, but then to go back with those young men and women and to be with them every day and to be open, had the opportunity to call. So it shows how the Attorney General and the Colonel Callahan, their vision is broad to make sure that our troopers are introduced to the chaplaincy program while they're in training, not just when they become troopers and get out and God forbid something happens, but the way we're doing now, we're in now with every class and we'll walk them through. And I'll say this about chaplaincy too, Gary, sometimes it's misunderstood when you say you're a chaplain for law enforcement. We are chaplains for everyone. We are the interfaith community, and we have a holistic approach. And we try to, at least I do, I try not to say law enforcement in the community. I try to gel us together as one community because all of us are part of one community. And I think the more we look at that through chaplaincy, whatever our interfaith belief is, we will empower the whole community as a whole. So I'm excited. We're just starting out doing some new things, new adventures, and I'm excited to work along with Major Carla Thomas and so many others to get this done. Laura Andrews, everybody wants to start calling names because I missed somebody, and then I'll be buying everybody coffee later on.
Well, in fact, we had an event a couple of weeks ago at West Trenton at the State Police Training Center, State Police headquarters, which was a picnic for all the civilian staff. And I think sometimes as chaplains, we focus on the officers, but we forget about the civilian staff, the dispatchers, the secretaries, even the maintenance people. And the state police had that incredible event a couple of weeks ago, and many of us were there as chaplains. And again, we got to know some of them. They got to know some of us. Any thoughts on that? Either one of you?
Yeah, so that's the Civilian Appreciation Day that you're speaking of. And you hit the nail on the head. It is to do just that. It somewhat serves as a reminder to all of us on the enlisted side as well. Not, so your chaplaincy group is probably more in that on the side of the fence of the enlisted side of our membership, because you are correct. The history shows that our chaplaincy program is more in line with our enlisted members. But we all need to remember that we have a few thousand civilian employees that are the true nuts and bolts to our agency and to our division. So it serves as a reminder to all of us. That Pastor Taylor and I, we happen to be together at a community outreach event in Trenton City earlier that morning. And it was a food pantry service, if you will, where we were handing out free food items to members of the community. And we both, as I'm directing traffic alongside with Pastor Taylor and welcoming folks from the community into their food pantry event, we both shared with each other how important it would be for us to make it back to that Civilian Appreciation Day. And together we both made sure that happened. And you're right, it's always that welcoming response that we get from our civilian members that reminds us that their needs and your services as chaplains are absolutely important to them as well. So that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that day up.
I think for all of our chaplains that are on the broadcast, we oftentimes have a honoring the police, fire, EMS in our houses of worship. Maybe we have a special day where we do that. But again, we forget the civilian staff. And so my encouragement would be to all our chaplains is to think about having a special day where we honor all the other staff, from the dispatchers to the secretaries, everybody that works, in these capacities. And I think that would be a great blessing to them, because a lot of times people aren't thinking about them. So just a thought, something maybe we can build on in the future, but we're trying to do that with the state police. And again, chaplains playing a vital role in that. Another question, how can chaplains work with police officers to build positive input into our communities? And as we're talking about resiliency, to help the people in our communities become resilient. Now, we already kind of touched on that. You had the food drive, but give examples of things maybe you have done and maybe build on that a little bit, where you're working with police to accomplish helping others to get through COVID, to get through the things that are happening out there, the financial difficulties where they're stressed out. And maybe they just don't know how to become resilient. Now, we're all learning, and chaplains, all of you eventually are going to receive training in the resilience program. So we're working towards that. Some of you have already received that. But carrying that over into the community, I think is so important. So maybe you could share some thoughts on that.
And Gary, that's important. I just want to go back just a little bit to talk about what you was talking about, even with dispatchers, what we're going to do under the leadership of Major Carla Thomas and Colonel Pat Callahan. Dispatchers can't get out, but chaplains get in. So what we're encouraging our chaplains to do in the state police and also others, if they pick it up with the local law enforcement, go in and just stand in the room, have a short prayer, because they're there sometimes 8, 10, 12 hours. But we can get into them, have a short prayer in that room. Nobody knows the stress that they're under. I mean, they're on the front line. They get the call first before the police officers or troopers are dispatched to the various locations. So we want to kind of take it to them the same way we take it to the community. We want to take this love from the interfaith community as chaplains to them, because they have all different beliefs too, and that's how we are as chaplains. We're interfaith, so we meet the needs. Another thing that we do, Gary, with that I'm a part of, that was developed about 7 years ago, possibly a little longer, is the Capital City Community Coalition. That was established with Bishop Wilcox, Sergeant Greg Williams, and myself. Now we up to 60 to 70 different organizations that before this pandemic, we were meeting twice a month. Everyone from that represents holistically the community, whether or not they're activists, teachers, superintendents, fire department, police department, attorney general office, state police, local law enforcement, educators, everyone that you can think of, the youth groups, nonprofits, and we'll discuss holistically. And that's why we came up with the terminology of one community, because at that table, everybody's there, including yourself. I think you've been there several times. And it has a wonderful approach. So I would say also to the chaplains and law enforcement in the various districts, North, Central, and South, if we would get these community coalitions together and we hold each other responsible. We just don't come in and complain. We find out what the problems are and we try to get the agencies that are needed to meet the needs of the community. And so far it's working. I mean, we hit some bumps in the road, but so far it's working. With COVID, you know, it was stressful. So as chaplains, we had to have many hats. We had to be a listening ear. We had to be healers, motivators, make sure that we're connected to the nonprofit organizations that was out there. And just like Phil just said, Buck was just saying, for 6 weeks, we partnered with farmers and they brought fresh produce up in the inner city. And we were able to hand it out for 6 weeks straight, 30-pound boxes. And it was just nice. You had the local chaplains along with the state police chaplains. You had the officers, troopers. They even had Lieutenant Colonel Fritz and Lieutenant Nobles out there. And I can't forget Lisa too. Lisa was out there, man. I tell you, we directing traffic, handing out food.
A lot of people show up too, right? A lot of people.
Great thing. Yeah. It was
How many boxes of food did you give out, Pastor, on a given day?
100 boxes in each term, 700 boxes, 300 pounds. I mean, 30-pound boxes. I wish they were 300. 30-pound boxes, 700 boxes per event. Per event. Yeah.
Each event, yeah. That's awesome.
And that put a small dent. It just put a small dent there because you have people from all walks of life that's hurting in this pandemic. And I think this is why it's going to be so important for the chaplaincy program, resiliency, to continue to work, because now we're seeing the mental stress that people have been under for the last year and a half. So it's very important.
I know we've done that here in Cumberland County last year, and we have another one coming up in July, and you run out of food, and people just keep coming. And there's a lot of food. We're talking about semi-loads of food that come in from the farmers. And so that's a great need. But you know what it does? You see people leave with big smiles on their faces.
Yeah.
And so thankful for law enforcement, chaplains helping out, helping them out, and they respond to that. Really, that's what it's all about, is helping others. And when we can work together to do that, chaplains, clergy, and law enforcement, it's a beautiful picture.
Yeah.
And so we want to continue to do that. Are there any other areas you can think of that we could help our fellow citizens in the area of resiliency?
Well, it's a lot, Gary, from the holistic approach. I mean, it's a lot of agencies I found out, nonprofits, that are doing great work. And I think with the chaplains and law enforcement, that we connect those agencies to the community. You'll be surprised sometimes of the organizations and agencies that are doing good work, but the word don't get out to the community. And I think we can bridge that gap because one of the great things that we do is we communicate. We are communicators. Chaplains are communicators. So we can make sure that that information is at our various places of worship, whatever that faith may be, and just have open. Now that we're working our way back to our local places of worship, have our law enforcement agencies, local and state, federal, just stop by. I have them sometimes stop by, do your paperwork, do different things, get to meet people in the community, and they see that you're a human being. And I think sometimes we forget that, Gary, with law enforcement. They're human beings. Take the uniform off. They're human beings. One community. The more we work at it, I think the better the relationship would be with the community and law enforcement. Because we all know we still got to deal with systemic injustice and all of that stuff. But it's up to us to make the difference. When we see a negative, we need to make it a positive.
And I know you're doing that in Trenton, and Captain Buck, you're doing a great job out in these events. And those are things sometimes chaplains will say, well, you know, how do I spend more time with the officer? Well, if we have events like that, coffee with a cop like we did on Saturday, other events, giving out food where the law enforcement community comes and the chaplains are there, well, now we're rubbing shoulders with both, you know, and they're getting to know us and we're getting to know them. So it really is a huge factor. Here's just another question from a little bit different perspective. How can police officers, what can police officers do to be an encouragement to chaplains as they serve alongside each other? And I think many times, and we understand that in ministry, it's expected that you know, what we do is give to others. And yet we want officers to realize that we're in this together, and we need to work together, and they need to see us as being part of them, even though we're not police officers. So any thoughts on that?
And Pastor Taylor and I, we talk about that a lot. So one thing I'll say, and I'll let Pastor Taylor expound on this, this sentiment is, and I've heard it from every speaker this morning. The chaplains and the ministry community, they are the voice. They're the ears and the voice of the communities that they serve. They are natural born communicators. And as law enforcement, we need to let that happen. And we need to let that voice travel to us as law enforcement. So that relationship just becomes that much more important. The listening aspect of our relationship, to me, has to become the most important aspect. Allow the chaplains, allow the local pastors, whether they're state police chaplains or not, allow that community to come together with the folks that they serve. And we need to be listeners. We need to partake in that conversation as best as we can. Like, you know, taking the invite to come to a coffee with the cop. And my conversation with our outreach members was that we need to emulate that as many times and as many places as we can. Create that in-person conversation. And we need our chaplains. We need those community leaders. We need those interfaith community leaders to be a part of that conversation. And we need to accept that you all, your community, you are the trusted ear and the trusted voice of those community members. And we need to let the public see that. And if we can accomplish that, that's a great first step.
That's excellent. You know, that it's a visual. It really is visual, because I mean, the community knows us, certainly our house of worship community, but even other areas in our community. And then when the police officers get to know us, and we realize it takes a while for them to get to know us and to build that trust. We teach that in our training, that it takes time to build that trust. But once that begins to happen, the more we spend time together, and you know, in the state police, we don't do ride-alongs, but in the municipal departments, we do ride-alongs. But these events, are a big thing, and we're going to now see more and more of that. I think now that COVID is starting to wane, hopefully. And any thoughts, Pastor Taylor, on that?
Well, also too, I like what you said, just getting out in the community. State police is a little hard because they have the officers have quite a bit of territory that they have to cover. But with the chaplains and the local law enforcement, even if you're not per se the officer, the cop on the beat, get out of the car and walk sometime. Go in the corner store, go in Dunkin' Donuts, go in the deli, the cleaners, or just walk up and down the street. And so you get to meet the people, and the people get to meet you in a different light before anything goes to the left in the community. You already have a relationship. And I think it's the same thing to challenge the chaplains too, just not on special days, but on any day. You don't have to do 10 blocks, just walk 1 block. Go to a baseball game, soccer game, different things. I mean, just to blend in and let them know who you are and that we're available throughout the state, the county, and the in the cities.
And keep the invites coming. We will be there. Just ask us to come, and I know you know that, Chaplain Holden, and I know Pastor Taylor knows that. But spread the word. You're hearing it here first. Just let us know, and we will do everything we can to show up, whether it's one member of our agency or multiple.
So chaplains those of you that are listening, keep that in mind. Don't forget to invite your state police to come to your events, and they will do the best they can because they're working hard on doing that. And to have state police representation there, that would be awesome for you and your event, as well as your local police department. One last question I have is, as we've been hearing about reform and a lot of the new things, the resiliency program is a new endeavor, and so most of our officers are still learning that. The RPOs have been pretty much trained. I know I've been around the state in many counties helping to train RPOs as a master resilience trainer. So that's a new thing. And the new other reforms that are coming down, as Bryn mentioned and as Alex mentioned. But as reform takes place, what can chaplains do to help with this, to encourage the officers to maybe avail themselves? What do you think? What can we do to encourage our officers as some of these new things take place? We all know that change is difficult. And so what can we do to be an encouragement? What do you think?
You know, Gary, one of the great things with our resiliency is that it's for us for the rest of our life. The thing I like about resiliency training, you can use it in any aspect of your life, not just as an officer, but as a dad, as a mom, as a sister, a brother, as a person in the community, because it's helping to make you whole and complete. And it's for every officer should know that it's for them. It's not something that's just here now and be gone later. This program would be here forever. The chaplains, all of us need to make sure we get that training. Because I'm telling you, it will help you at home. If you're a pastor, it'll help you in your church. If you're a community leader involved in things with the youth, it will help you. It's a holistic approach. It's just not a spiritual approach, but it's about making individuals whole and complete. And it's safe. It's a safe environment. It's good to know for the officers that's a call that won't put you on the taboo list. It's there to support you and to guide you and to give you the strength that you need as you move forward. So, Gary, I encourage all the chaplains to get involved and make sure that we can help empower our officers, empower other clergy, empower other yeah, because that's a big piece in there. We go through a lot of stressful issues too. So we need to know that the resiliency program is for everyone, from a child all the way up to, I like to say, to your golden years.
Yeah. And that's our goal ultimately. Right now it's being taught to law enforcement and chaplains. Hopefully, again, you'll all be able to get it in the future. But I know our goal on our end here is to see, and what we're doing in other areas, like Rob talked about, is expanding that out to educators, to healthcare, to students. If a student goes through a difficult thing, or maybe commits a crime, in my opinion, it would be awesome if they could learn how to become resilient, how to bounce back. And that's what resiliency is all about. It's rebounding. It's bouncing back in our lives. And a lot of people don't know how to do that. So I know I'm 100% sold on it. I'm an instructor in it. I wouldn't be doing it if I wasn't 100% sold on it, probably. And I am 100% sold on it. Any other thoughts on any of the other reform? Captain Buck, what do you think? What's your thoughts as we finish up?
Thank you. And I'm in full agreement, with both of you. And again, Pastor Taylor and I, we talk about it all the time. I think a key, and I can't speak for every law enforcement agency in New Jersey, but a key in the state police, if you will, is we have units comprised of all civilians who are practicing technicians and counselors in certain services. We have a peer unit, which is comprised of all enlisted members, and a lot of what they do is in conjunction with our chaplaincy program, and in addition to our medical services unit. And all four of those entities, our peer unit, our employees assistance unit, our medical services unit, and our chaplaincy program, are all connected to each other, and they all support each other in the services that they provide to our enlisted members and to our civilian members. So I think the key is just that, is to keep that connectivity active, ensure, and that's the job of me and Major Carla Thomas, to ensure that all those entities are sharing information and referring our members to each other, because it's a constant process of referral and service. And it's not always easy, as some of us know, to get certain messages to our enlisted members, especially to use those services. It's our job to provide the service and to get our members to use those services. So, but we're talking and becoming more and more successful every day with that challenge.
Yeah, I didn't see that as a challenge.
Gary,
how all beginning to fit together. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say it's progress, not change.
That's what we need.
But when you say change, progress is great for everybody.
In resiliency, we need the growth mindset. We need that growth. And that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish. Any closing thoughts as we wrap our panel up and begin to cover a couple other things?
I just want to say thank you again for having me. I'm thankful for the relationship that I've, over the last 5 or 6 months since being assigned to this position, my relationship with Pastor Taylor and the chaplaincy program is one that I'm sharing with the entire membership. Anyone that's civilian or enlisted that I can get in front of, sometimes with Pastor Taylor, sometimes without him, I share the importance and the revelation of our relationship and why it's important. I want to say thank you to Pastor Taylor for that, and thank you all for allowing me to be a part of your conference today. And I'm just going to close with congratulations to Pastor Porter, and I heard that he's does a lot of his service in Monmouth County. I'm from Cumberland County, as you know, Chaplain Holden. I currently live in the Monmouth County area, so maybe in short term, Pastor Taylor and I can meet Pastor Porter one day and try to connect some of our services.
And all the things we've been talking about, he has been doing in Monmouth County. So
Right.
certainly worthy of that award. Awesome. And we have so many chaplains that are doing so many things, and we can all do more, especially as we come out of COVID now. We have more opportunities to do more. Those thoughts are there. Pastor Taylor, any closing?
I said all the chaplains continue to do a great job. I think this pandemic really showed you, if you didn't know, how important you were. And I want to thank all of you for what you've been doing throughout the years, especially with the state police and the local chaplains. It's not a thing where you get a pat on the back. You know, it's service. We were called to serve, continue to serve, and those that have been doing it for a long time, hang on in there, keep encouraging the new chaplains that are coming up. God bless you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it very much, and great to work with you. And thank you for the great comments along the way. As we begin to wrap some of this up, I'm going to share some thoughts from reflection, moment of reflection. But I just wanted to mention that, you know, we really haven't said anything in this hour, in this period of time on our Department of Corrections. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to give the invocation at the Department of Corrections graduation of their new officers actually we were at the War Memorial in Trenton, and I'm thinking, wow, it'd be great if we could be here tomorrow for the conference, but we're here today. And as many of you know, we now have worked with the Department of Corrections to begin to supply chaplains for the officers in the Department of Corrections. Well, we started that, and then COVID hit, so everything was backed up because we couldn't go in. But it's ramping up again. And if you have not signed up to be a DOC chaplain, we have the applications available, and we'll get those out to you. But let me know, please, because they're crying for our help. They want our help. And now that it's starting to open up more than ever before, all the things that our corrections officers have been through during COVID and all that, you know, there's been those that have died because of COVID in our correction system, the officers especially that have died, we're thinking of, and the inmates as well. And they need our help. So if you can help with that, we want to continue to build that and develop it. We just started it, and then COVID hit. And just want to mention a few other things before I share some closing thoughts, and Bryn will be coming back on in a moment. We have a chaplain basic training coming up next week, actually June 14th and 15th in Ocean County. But basically it's already full, and we have probably 40 coming for that training, a tremendous group. We have another training on June 21 and 22 in Cape May County. Both of these are sponsored by the prosecutor's offices. We might have a few openings there. We're going to also be out in Coatesville, Pennsylvania, the end of June. And then Cherie and I talked with you about the group crisis intervention training, the CISM training. So we've scheduled that for August 17 and 18 at the Cop to Cop facility in New Brunswick. And again, we'll put this all out on our website so you have these dates. And you might find interesting that we're going to be going to New Haven, Connecticut in August, our third trip to Connecticut, but working with the New Haven Police Department. They're going to sponsor a training there for us as well. One other thing that I want all of you chaplains to come if you can. This year, September 11th, is the 20th anniversary of the incident at the World Trade Center, the bombing at the World Trade Center, the planes that flew into the towers that we all know so much about. 20 years ago, hard to believe. And that falls on a Saturday. The 9/11 falls on a Saturday. So we are planning an event at the Chapel of Four Chaplains, which is the former Navy Chapel at the Philadelphia Navy Yard, which is the headquarters for the Chapel of Four Chaplains, the organization that I went out under to the World Trade Center. I went out under that organization. There were 43 of us chaplains that went. So we're anticipating a tremendous day. We'll have a service first thing in the morning, remembering what happened on 9/11. And then we'll have a special presentation. We want to honor all police, fire, EMS chaplains. We want to honor all of them that day. and there's going to be a luncheon. There's going to be a special sacred concert at the end of the day. So you're going to get a whole lot more information about that coming up, but that will be on September 11th in Philadelphia. And I want to invite all of you to come and get the word out, because we got a lot of space there. We'll set up a big tent for the food, and we're planning all of that on that day to honor our first responders, who, not just those who served on 9/11, we're certainly going to honor some of them and other first responders as well, but to serve all first responder chaplains, to honor all first responder chaplains on that day. Just some closing thoughts before Bryn comes back on. And we call this moment of reflection. But as we've been talking about resiliency, another way to think resiliently, that's my thought. And we all know, as clergy and those of us that work with people, and we deal with people that die, and we're with them sometimes when they die, and we officiate funerals, the journey is short, folks. The journey is short. And an elderly woman got on a bus and sat down, and at the next stop, a strong, grumpy young woman climbed up and sat down beside the old woman, and she was hitting her with her numerous bags, didn't seem to care. And when she saw that the elderly woman remained silent, the young woman asked her why she had not complained when she got hit with her bags. And the elderly woman replied, even with a smile on her face, "There's no need to be rude or discuss something so insignificant, as my trip next to you is so short, because I'm going to get off at the next stop." And I think this answer deserves to be written, might I say, in gold letters. There's no need to discuss something so insignificant, because our journey together is too short. And when we teach resiliency, we certainly teach this. And I think each of us understand that our time in this world really is short. Certainly the older we get, we recognize that. James said life is like a vapor. It appears for a short time and it vanishes away. That darkening it with useless arguments, jealousy, not forgiving others, discontentment, bad attitudes, you know what? They are a ridiculous waste of time and energy. They really are. Did someone break your heart? That may be the case. Well, stay calm, folks, because the trip is too short. Did someone betray you, intimidate you, cheat, or humiliate you? Relax. Relax. Don't be stressed. The trip is too short. Did someone betray you? Did someone insult you without reason? I would say, stay calm. Ignore it. The trip's too short. Did a neighbor make a comment that you didn't like? Again, say, stay calm. Ignore him. Forgive that. You know why? Because the trip is too short. And whatever the problem someone has brought us, remember that our journey together is what? It's really too short. We're not really here very long. And no one knows the length of my trip or your trip. I don't know the length of my trip. You don't know really the length of your trip. Only God knows that. Nobody knows when it will arrive at its stop. Nobody knows that. Our trip together even is too short. So let me say this to you all as I encourage you. Let us appreciate friends and family. Let us be respectful, kind, and forgiving, because we will be filled with gratitude and joy when we do that. And we teach that in resiliency. After all, our trip is very, very short. So share your smile to everyone. As soon as you can take off your mask to do that, share your smile to everyone. Our trip is very short. Let me encourage you, chaplains and others that have tuned in, law enforcement that have tuned in today. We're all in this together, and I'm so thankful for each one of you. It's been my joy these many years to work with all of you and to see you come through our training and see you become chaplains and see you do your job effectively. Let's continue to do it for the glory of God, because our trip is very short. God bless you, folks. God bless you. And Bryn, are you there? One other thing as Bryn is coming on, I just shared this with it's really a quote, and I thought maybe I'll close with this. Bryn, you can share whatever after. It's really from Ralph Waldo Emerson. Remember him? I mean, he was many years ago before my time, but he said this: write it on your heart that every day is the best day in the year. He is rich who owns the day, and no one owns the day who allows it to be invaded with fret and worry and anxiety. Finish every day and be done with it. You have done what you could. Some blunders and absurdities no doubt crept in. Forget them as soon as you can. Tomorrow's a new day. Begin it well and serenely with too high a spirit to be cumbered with your old nonsense. This new day is too dear with its hopes and invitations to waste a moment on our yesterdays, because again, life is too short. Bryn, thank you for everything so much, all the work that you did to put on this conference.
Thank you so much. Again, we all work together, and we are all a team, and we all have different parts and responsibilities and roles. And I think that over the years, we have come together and really taken the Chaplains Conference to another level. So I appreciate it so much. With that being said, I want to say thank you to all of our presenters, many of whom have been around for quite some time, but we had some newcomers today. So we know every year we like to mix it up. So there's another one for the record books.
Yes.
We can say that we met for the 8th annual and look forward to the 9th annual. Wow.
Live in person, right? Bryn, hopefully live and in person.
I mean, as long as, and much cross and much prayer, and hopefully, who knows, we may be able to do something else this fall. So let's continue to stay in touch and, take the barometer on things. But, it was very important to the Attorney General to continue the conference during the pandemic, and to, switch to the virtual format, to continue to have this dialogue, to have this conversation, and so that you know how important you are to this whole process. And I think if nothing else came across today, chaplains should really feel loved and respected during this time that we've been together. So again, thank you to all the presenters. Thank you to our partners. Several of the prosecutors were on and joined us this morning, our county prosecutors. They have a meeting today that we would usually host at the War Memorial. And even though we're not together, their meeting was this morning, and they pushed it back to the afternoon just so that they could join us and they could be in support of us. So I want to thank the County Prosecutors Association of New Jersey. I also want to thank the New Jersey State Association Chiefs of Police, because they definitely know the value of this relationship, and they continue to provide support. And I thought the opening remarks were very touching and very heartfelt. So again, thank you to all, and we look forward to the time that we can meet again in person. Many thanks to Tara Camp, who has graciously been behind the scenes taking care of today's conference and has aided us in actually ending 15 minutes early. So thank you so much, and everyone have a blessed day.
Thank you, Bryn. God bless everybody. Keep in touch.